have a challenging question, but it's to inform our practice. What, if any, what were the concerns? Like if we were to have Prince with his dad now in a supervised visitation setting, what, if anything, were the signs that he displayed, apart from the questioning about the insurance policy, that providers here could take into account to report to the court to say, listen, we don't think this is a good idea? Because what's challenging in our practice is that we're all trying our best, but nobody has a crystal ball. And so it puts folks in a tough position, and nobody wants a fatality. That's the worst thing that could ever happen, right? So I guess that's my question. What, if anything, should have been noted and reported to avoid something like this happening again?
So I don't know if the supervisor has that much, like, I encourage you to, like, try to stay out of the drama as much as possible, I guess. Like, that would probably be my recommendation. There were some things, like, for example, our supervisor would pass messages for him, which, like, was kind of she became an extension of the abuse for me. So that's don't do that. And I think, like, just take note of, if you feel like the person who's being supervised is more interested in trying to convince you that they're a good person than spending time with the child, I think that's an easy thing to cut off. You could just be like, sir, or ma'am, your child's right there, and, like, pretend I'm not here. Like, I'm not here for you to convince about whether or not you should be here. So I would take note of those things. I'd be like, he spent more time either complaining about the mom, if it's a woman complaining about the dad, than actually paying attention to the child. I think one thing that I noticed from the videos, I don't know if anybody else picked this up, but, like, when Prince was crying, he was laughing, and he wasn't, like, consoling him. And I remember that day because it was one of the first visits. First of all, they brought him to the mall, which is, like, it will make anyone anxious, like, even if you're not, a year-old child. And he didn't know him. And so he was probably panicked. And they ended up having to stop the visit because Prince got so upset that he was, like, throwing up, and, like, it was bad. And part of the problem is that, like, look, this child, he was a lover. Like, people he did not know, he would kiss you, he would hug you. He was not the type of kid that wasn't agreeable. But in this particular situation, I think all it would have taken is his dad to just hug him, right? So, like, just paying attention to some of those, like, body language things where you're like, well, that's interesting. Now, look, it could have been a coachable moment, right? Like, taking a note, like, hey, the baby's crying, they're not consoling them. You don't necessarily have to intervene in the moment, but, like, it could be an opportunity later to be like, hey, listen, I noticed you had some challenges when the baby was crying, right? Or if you notice a parent who's getting super frustrated when the baby's crying, right? To me, that's a serious red flag, because if they didn't have supervision and their frustration got to the point where they're, like, harming the child, like, to me, those are things that I think would be of note in a report so that the court can see what happened, right? And I think it's very possible to try really hard to be a neutral, unbiased, in the sense that you are just reporting what you see, right? Good or bad, right? Like, you could see, like, let's say that this guy is a super abuser, but then he comes in and he's, like, he's doing things that you think are positive. That doesn't necessarily mean he should be exited, but, like, it's a good positive signal that at least there's he's able to be in a supervised setting and be positive for the child. Because I also think there's probably cases where even in a supervised setting, the person is, like, seriously detrimental to the kid.